The training base on Delta 9 did not look like a normal military camp. It looked like something built on the edge of a nightmare. Sharp rocks, burning winds, strange plants that hissed when touched, and a sky that changed colors every few minutes like it could not decide what mood it was in. Every alien who arrived on that planet understood one thing the moment they stepped onto the rough soil. This place wanted them gone. For decades, Delta 9 had been used for only one purpose: the Deathworld drills. These drills were feared across the galaxy. They were not meant to build soldiers. They were meant to reveal who could survive the impossible, and most could not. On this day, more than 100 alien recruits from different species stood in formation, waiting for the first drill to begin. Their bodies shook. Their eyes darted around. Many whispered prayers in their own languages. The wind itself sounded like it was laughing at them. Some recruits came from high-gravity planets. Some came from frozen worlds. Some came from toxic swamps. But all of them, no matter their home world, shared the same fear. Delta 9 was worse. At the far end of the open field, near a cluster of jagged black rocks, stood the human, Connor Hale. He didn't seem nervous. He didn't seem worried. He didn't even seem focused. Instead, he sat on a flat stone, relaxed, as if he had come here for a picnic. A small lunchbox rested beside him. While every alien scanned the sky for danger, Connor opened the box and examined his food with calm interest. The recruits stared at him with confusion and disbelief. Was he insane? Was he joking? Did he not know where he was? Some of them had trained for years just to survive the first drill. They had studied every danger, every threat, every warning. Yet the human looked bored. A tall, insect-like cadet named Garin whispered to the soldier next to him, "He is not normal. No one eats food before the drills. No one." The soldier beside him, a blue-skinned reptilian called Velos, replied, "Maybe humans don't understand fear, or maybe this is normal to them." Rumors about humans had always been strange. Some said humans came from a world ranked Deathworld Level 5. Some said their planet was full of storms, huge animals, and impossible climates. Others said humans had soft bodies but the strongest spirits. Most aliens believed the stories were exaggerations. But now, watching Connor eat calmly on Delta 9, they weren't so sure. A loud siren suddenly echoed across the training grounds. The ground shook lightly, and the mountains in the distance flickered with blue light. A steel tower rose slowly from underneath the soil, glowing red with heat. Every alien straightened up immediately. This was the start, the moment they all feared, the first Deathworld drill. A giant hologram lit up above the tower, showing a countdown. 10, 9, 8. The recruits tensed, breathing fast, eyes fixed ahead. Connor didn't move. He simply opened his drink and took a slow sip. 7, 6. The wind began to howl harder. Small pieces of dust lifted off the ground like tiny storms forming at their feet. 5. A voice from the speakers boomed across the field. Deathworld Drill 1. Shockwave Run. Recruits must remain standing for 2 full shockwave cycles. Failure results in immediate evacuation. That meant anyone who fell was done. Most would fall. 4, 3. Aliens clenched their teeth. Bodies tightened. Hearts pounded. 2. The sky darkened. The ground vibrated. A powerful hum filled the air like something massive was charging energy. 1. Connor placed a napkin on his lap. 0. A thunderous wave of force exploded across the field, slamming into every recruit like a giant invisible hammer. Many were thrown backward instantly. Others dropped to their knees, gasping for breath. The very air felt heavy, pressing against their lungs and bones. The shock wave continued, rolling over the ground with deep rumbling sound. Dust flew, boots slid. Some alien screamed. The storm of pressure hit Connor too, but he only leaned slightly to the side, protecting his lunch. Then he continued eating. The aliens who were still conscious stared at him in terror and disbelief. A second shockwave hit, stronger than the first. It pushed entire groups of recruits across the dirt. A few fainted on the spot. A handful managed to stay standing, but barely. Connor simply reached into his lunchbox and took another bite of his food. The pressure that crushed every other species on the field didn't seem to matter to him. He chewed calmly, occasionally glancing around at the chaos like he was watching a sports match. Above, the drill commanders observing from the control tower exchanged confused and nervous looks. Is a human unaffected? Check the readings. Check his vitals. This cannot be right. Within seconds, data streamed across their screens. Connor's heart rate was normal. His breathing was normal. His stress levels were low. Impossible, one officer muttered. Down on the ground, the surviving recruits fought to stay upright, but they couldn't take their eyes off the human. Another alien, a small four-armed creature named RYTH, crawled forward to the shaking ground. Dust covered his suit, and one of his arms trembled from the strain. He stopped near Connor and shouted over the roaring wind, "Human, does this not hurt? Are you not in danger?" Connor looked at him, then at the storm around them, then at his food. "Hurt," he said. "Nah, this reminds me of home. A little windy, that's all." Our YTH stared at him like he had just seen a ghost. The shock wave finally ended with a final deep boom that echoed across the land. The dust settled. The light in the sky returned to normal. Hundreds of recruits lay on the ground, exhausted, defeated, or barely conscious. Only the human remained sitting comfortably, clean, calm, and finishing his lunch. And that was the moment the entire training base learned a truth they had never believed. Deathworld drills crushed every species. But for a human, it was just another lunchtime. The training field on Delta 9 looked like a battlefield after the first drill. Dust clouds floated across the ground. The air buzzed with leftover energy from the shock waves. Most recruits lay flat on the dirt, gasping for breath. Some tried to stand up, but dropped again, their legs shaking from the heavy pressure they'd faced only moments earlier. Only one person looked completely untouched. Connor Hale, the human, tapped the side of his lunchbox to shake out crumbs, then took a slow sip from his drink. His clothes were clean, his posture relaxed, and his heartbeat steady as if he had just finished a peaceful break at home. The other recruits watched him with wide, confused eyes. Garin, the tall insect-like soldier, clung to a cracked training pole while catching his breath. His wings buzzed weakly. "He is not normal," he whispered again, but this time his voice carried real fear. He should not be able to sit through that drill. Velos, the reptilian trainee beside him, nodded slowly. "I thought humans were soft, but now, I am not sure what they are." Above the field, the control tower was alive with noise. Officers argued over screens, sensors, and charts that made no sense. "His vitals are steady. No spike in stress levels either. Check the equipment. Maybe it's broken." The equipment was not broken. Delta 9, a planet designed to break even the strongest, had just watched a human finish lunch, while everyone else collapsed. The second drill was coming soon, but the recruits were not ready. Some still struggled to breathe normally. Others needed help standing. Medics rushed the injured, checking for signs of serious stress fatigue. Commander Thalrix, a tall, gray-furred officer with four glowing eyes, stepped onto the balcony of the tower and looked down at the field. His gaze locked onto Connor. "This is not bravery," he muttered. "This is something else." The second drill begins. Another siren echoed through the valley. This one had a sharper tone. The ground vibrated again, but not as violently as before. The recruits slowly staggered back into formation, some leaning on each other for support. Connor walked toward the formation casually, wiping his hands on a napkin. "Did you enjoy your meal?" Our YDH, the small four-armed creature, asked him quietly. Connor smiled. "Yeah, it was good." Our YTH blinked all four eyes. He had never been so confused in his life. A new hologram appeared above the training tower. "Deathworld Drill 2, Magnetic Lift Cycle." The description scrolled underneath. High-intensity magnetic fields will activate around the recruits, pulling and pushing them through rapid cycles. Recruits must maintain balance and avoid losing control. The aliens groaned. Many feared this drill even more than the last one. "Magnetic waves on Delta 9 are unpredictable," Garin muttered. "Last year, 3 recruits flew into each other and hit the ground so hard they could not continue." Connor listened but didn't comment. He looked more interested in the sky than the drill. The countdown began again. 10, 9. Our YTH swallowed nervously. His small frame was not built for magnetic waves. He positioned himself on the ground and gripped it with all four hands. 8. Velos braced his feet into the soil. 7, 6. Connor stretched lightly, as if preparing for a short jog. 5. Commander Thaurix's voice boomed from the speakers. Prepare yourselves. If you lose control of your body, roll onto your side to avoid injury. Maintain awareness at all times. 4, 3. The air crackled with static. Small sparks danced across the ground. 2. Connor blinked once, calm as ever. 1, 0. A loud thump pulsed through the field. Suddenly, every recruit lifted several feet off the ground. Some screamed. Others spun in the air wildly as the magnetic fields yanked them left, then right, then up again. Our YTH spun like a leaf in a storm. Garen's wings flapped helplessly, but the magnetic pull overpowered them. Velos tried to hold a stable form, but ended up flipping upside down. Connor also rose into the air, but only a little. His body floated slowly, like he was relaxing in warm water. While the recruits flailed and panicked, Connor just looked around curiously. Feels like low gravity back home, he said to no one in particular. The magnetic waves shifted direction sharply. Recruits tumbled across the air, bumping into each other. Some spun too fast to see straight. Connor rotated once, gently, and then righted himself again. The metal panels on the training field glowed blue as the intensity increased. The fields pulled harder this time. Our YTH flew dangerously close to a rock, but Connor reached out midair and grabbed one of his arms, stopping his crash. Careful, Connor said simply. Our YTH's voice shook. TH, thank you. How are you so calm? Connor shrugged. Didn't your planets have weird weather? Ours had storms like this sometimes. Not magnetic ones, but wild enough. Our YTH could only stare. Humans were unbelievable. The drill lasted 3 long minutes. To the recruits, it felt like hours. When it finally ended, the magnetic pull dropped, and everyone fell to the ground. Some landed on their feet. Many did not. Connor landed softly, barely disturbed. Around him, soldiers groaned and held their heads. A few tried to stand but swayed dangerously. Others lay flat on the ground, breathless. You still okay? Connor asked casually. Our YTH nodded weakly. I do not understand how you function. Connor smiled. You get used to it. The recruits did not know whether he was joking or telling the simple truth. The fear grows. Word spread through the base quickly. The human survived drill 2 without effort. He saved another recruit midair. He seems immune to the planet's madness. By the time medics checked everyone again, a small crowd had formed around Connor. Not to celebrate him, but to observe him carefully, like he was a new species discovered in the wild. Was he a super soldier? Was he modified? Was he hiding something? No one knew, but one thing was clear. The galaxy's strongest recruits were struggling to survive, while the human had barely broken a sweat. The training field grew quieter after the second drill, but the silence was not peaceful. It was a heavy kind, the kind that comes when everyone is too shocked to speak. Dust still lingered in the air, swirling around the tired recruits who sat or lay on the ground, recovering from the magnetic chaos they had just survived. In the middle of all these exhausted bodies, Connor Hale stood calmly, brushing some dirt off his sleeve. His steady movements felt out of place on Delta 9, a planet where nothing was ever calm. The other recruits watched him the way someone might watch an unexplained miracle, half curious, half afraid. RYTH, the small four-armed alien Connor had saved from smashing into rocks, sat nearby with his arms shaking slightly. He stared at the human with all 4 of his eyes. How are you, normal? RYTH finally asked. His voice sounded fragile, like he was afraid of the answer. Connor looked at him. Normal? I'm just doing the drills like everyone else. But you are not like everyone else, RYTH insisted. We are barely standing. You look like you could run a marathon. Connor chuckled lightly. Well, I mean, I could. But I don't think commanders want that. Our YTH's mouth dropped open. He wasn't sure if Connor was joking. He hoped he was. But humans were hard to read. A short distance away, Garan and Velos were having their own conversation. I think humans come from a monster planet, Velos whispered. A world where everything is dangerous. Garan nodded with nervous agreement. He treats these drills like morning exercise. If this is easy for him, what is hard for him? None of them knew. None of them wanted to know. The commanders react. Inside the control tower, the atmosphere was even more intense. Officers stood around glowing screens, staring at charts that refused to make sense. He handled the second drill like it was nothing, one officer said. His stress levels barely moved. Another added. Commander Thaurix rubbed his chin slowly, deep in thought. We need to understand this. Humans cannot be this resistant unless the stories about their homeworld are true. What stories? A young technician asked. Thaurix looked out at the field. Legends, whispers, reports classified by Earth's own government. They say humans evolved on a world full of storms, predators, and shifting environments. A world that shaped them into something unusual. The technician gulped. So he's not ignoring danger. He's just used to it. Maybe, Thaurix said. Or maybe humans simply view danger differently. The third drill approaches. Another alarm echoed across the base. Unlike the previous sirens, this one had a slow, rising tone. The recruits stiffened immediately. Whatever was coming next, they knew it would not be easy. The hologram above the tower flickered to life again. Deathworld Drill 3, Thermal Shift Test. A smaller line of text appeared. Recruits will be exposed to extreme temperature spikes. Endure 2 full cycles without losing mobility. Many recruits groaned. Some whispered, "Not this one, anything but this." Connor tilted his head. Thermal shifts? Like changing weather? Our YTH's voice squeaked. Changing weather? Human! This is not weather. This is torture. Connor shrugged. Depends on where you're from. The recruits slowly returned to their positions, though some stumbled. Medics took a few injured trainees to the sideline for treatment. Connor stood tall, even curious. A deep rumble vibrated through the soil. The temperature dropped suddenly, like a giant invisible hand had swept cold air across the entire valley. Frost formed on the nearby rocks within seconds. The breath of every recruit turned white in the air. Our YTH hugged himself tightly. Too cold, too fast. Garen's wings froze in place. Velos' scales turned dull as he shivered violently. Connor rubbed his hands together. Feels like winter. Our YTH stared at him. Winter? Connor nodded. Yeah, back home. Some places get way colder than this. Our YTH blinked, stunned. Your planet is dangerous. Connor smiled. Sometimes, yeah. But then the shift reversed. The frost melted instantly. Heat blasted across the field like a sudden desert storm. The air shimmered. The ground steamed. Recruits cried out as the temperature rose too fast for their bodies to adjust. Velos fell to one knee, panting. This is too much. Garen's wings trembled violently behind him. I cannot regulate my temperature. Our YTH tried to steady himself, but nearly collapsed. And Connor? He simply wiped his forehead. Warm now, he said casually, like a sunny day. Our YTH almost fainted, not because of the heat, but because of shock. You are not real, our YTH whispered. You are something else. The recruits questioned everything. As the temperature returned to normal, many recruits sat heavily on the ground. Their bodies felt heavy, their minds foggy. Their spirits felt crushed. Our YTH, still breathing hard, looked at Connor with a mix of fear and respect. Human, he said, is this easy for you? Connor simply shrugged. It's not that bad. I've lived through days hotter than this and colder than this. But how? Velos asked from the ground. How does your body manage this? Connor answered calmly. Humans adapt. We're kind of known for it. The recruits exchanged glances. This sounded less like a simple answer and more like a warning. Garen leaned closer. So this is nothing to you? Connor shook his head. Oh no, it's something. But it's just normalish. Normalish. Our white TH repeated with disbelief. Yeah, Connor said. Where I'm from, the weather can change like this in a day. Sometimes twice. The recruits froze. Even Delta 9 didn't change that fast. A new fear grows. By the time the third drill ended, the entire training base buzzed with whispers. The human didn't suffer. The human wasn't afraid. The human enjoyed the challenge. Some recruits even wondered, are humans even a peace species? Or are they silently the strongest in the galaxy? Connor walked across the field quietly, unaware of the legend forming behind him. But everyone else knew. And for the first time, many recruits looked at the human not with confusion, but with awe. The sun of Delta 9 shifted behind a long line of clouds, turning the sky a dull shade of orange. The training field still carried the heat from the thermal shift test. Small steam patches rose from cracks in the soil, and many recruits sat under shade poles trying to cool down. Connor Hale didn't need to cool down. He stood near a metal container, pouring water from his bottle onto his hands, as if he had only finished a light workout. The recruits watched him silently. They didn't talk openly now, not because they didn't want to, but because none of them knew how to describe what they felt anymore. Confusion? Fear? Admiration? All three mixed into one heavy emotion. Our white TH, still exhausted, sat on a crate and stared at Connor like he was trying to solve a mystery. I believe, our white TH said softly, that humans do not feel the same way we do. Velos shook his head. No, they feel, but they do not break. Garin buzzed his wings slowly, still trying to warm them. They are built differently. Their bodies, and maybe their minds too. But none of the recruits had the full picture. Only the commanders in the tower did. Inside the command tower. The inside of the tower was filled with blue screens, floating displays, and rows of officers speaking urgently. Delta 9's control center always stayed busy during drills, but today the tension was different. The officers weren't worried about casualties. They weren't worried about the next drill. They were worried about one human. Commander Thalric stood near the central table, staring at a holographic projection of Connor's vitals. His four glowing eyes narrowed as the data scrolled. No spike in heart rate, an officer said. No signs of overheating during the thermal test, another reported. His oxygen level stayed stable even during the shockwave pressure. A third added. Thalric folded his arms. He experienced the same drills as everyone else, correct? Yes, Commander. And he performed them without difficulty? Yes, Commander. A moment of silence filled the room. Thalric finally spoke. Gather the specialists. We need answers. A few minutes later, 3 experts arrived, one medical, one environmental, and one psychological. The medical officer stepped forward. Commander, human physiology is known to be adaptable, but this is beyond normal. Connor Hale displays no strain. The environmental specialist added, Delta 9 conditions should cause at least mild stress to all known species, even those from durable worlds. But the human reacted like Delta 9 was gentle. The psychological specialist hesitated before speaking. Commander, humans have unusual mental responses. Some reports claim they can stay calm in situations that would terrify others. Thalric leaned closer. Why? Because they evolved on a dangerous world, the specialist said. They learned to treat threats as routine, or to control fear differently. So, Thalric said slowly, to him, this is normal? The specialist nodded. Possibly. Thalric turned back to the hologram of Connor. The human stood outside, stretching lightly, looking like he was waiting for the next drill with mild interest. This changes everything, Thalric said. The officers around the room did not yet understand what he meant, but they would soon. Back on the training ground, Connor walked toward the shade poles, holding a small packet from his bag. Our white EH noticed and tilted his head. More food, he asked. Connor smiled. Just a snack. Our white TH blinked. During training? Connor shrugged. Why not? We're between drills. Garin leaned forward. You do not feel fear? Not even a little. Connor looked surprised. Fear? No, I feel fear. Everyone does. But these drills aren't scary. They're just different. Velo sat on the ground, his scales slowly changing color as he recovered. Human, he asked. Your world, is it like this planet? Connor laughed. No. Delta 9 is much more extreme. But Earth has storms. Earthquakes, deserts, cold zones. Volcanoes, the usual. The recruits went silent. Yes, Garin whispered. The usual. Of course. Connor's tone was friendly, but the effect was terrifying. To the aliens, Earth sounded like a place they would never survive. Our YTH finally said, Human, are you trained from childhood to handle such things? No, Connor answered. Most humans don't experience all of it, but our species grew up with danger. We got used to it. Used to it. Velos repeated. Danger? Your kind got used to danger? Connor smiled slightly. Yeah, humans are adaptable. If life is hard, we figure out how to handle it. The recruits didn't know what to say. Every sentence Connor spoke made them rethink everything they knew about humans. The commander's approach. A sound echoed from across the field. Metal boots striking the ground in a steady rhythm. Everyone turned to see Commander Thalrix and 2 officers walking straight toward Connor. The recruit stiffened instantly. Even Connor raised his eyebrows. Thalrix stopped in front of him. Human Connor Hale, he said, voice calm but serious. We need to speak with you. Our YTH whispered. You are in trouble. Connor whispered back, I didn't do anything. Thalrix looked at Connor with a mixture of curiosity and caution. We have been reviewing your performance. Your results are unusual. Connor nodded slowly. Is that bad? Not bad, Thalrix said. Unexpected. The psychological specialist stepped forward. We wish to understand how you endure the drills so easily. Connor scratched his head. I don't know. I'm just doing them. Thalrix stared at him for a moment. Then he asked the question everyone wanted answered. Human, do you consider Delta 9 dangerous? Connor thought about it. Dangerous? Sure, but not the worst I've seen. The recruits around him nearly fainted. Thalrix exhaled slowly. That is astonishing. Connor shrugged. You should see Earth on a bad day. The recruits froze. Even Thalrix needed a moment to process it. The whisper spreads. Within minutes, the news spread across the entire training base. The human thinks Delta 9 is not the worst. The human thinks danger is normal. The human is not struggling. He is adapting. Some recruits looked at him like a hero, some like a threat, but everyone agreed on one thing. Humans were far more than anyone had ever believed, and the drills were not over yet. The training yard was never quiet, but on this day it felt different. The air held a strange tension, as if the whole place was waiting for something. The alien recruits stood in scattered groups, whispering nervously, stealing quick looks at the humans sitting on a broken crate near the edge of the field. His name was Mason Hale, and he was calm as always. He wasn't doing drills or meditating or preparing for the next test. He was simply opening his lunchbox again. It had become a routine now. The yard shook with fear. The recruits panicked, and Mason calmly ate lunch like nothing in the world could bother him. But today, something unusual happened. For the first time, one of the alien recruits approached him. Her name was Sarah, a soft-spoken member of a species known for being extremely careful and gentle. She trembled as she walked, her thin blue hands shaking. She kept her eyes on the ground, as if even looking at Mason directly was too much pressure. Mason looked up from his meal and smiled. Hey there, you okay? Sarah swallowed hard. I want to understand. Why are you not afraid? Why are you not tired? Everyone else is suffering. Everyone else wants to quit. But you look peaceful. Mason took a slow breath. He didn't rush. He didn't try to impress her. He just sat there, thinking. Finally, he said, because I learned a long time ago that fear takes more energy than effort. Sarah blinked. I don't understand. Think of it like this, Mason continued. When you're scared, your mind keeps fighting against the moment. You panic, you freeze, you overthink everything. But if you accept the moment, If you accept the challenge, your body relaxes. You can do more because you're not wasting energy fighting your own fear. Sarah lowered herself carefully to sit a small distance away. But these drills, they are too much for us. Mason handed her a piece of soft bread from his lunch. She stared, surprised. "Try it," he said. She took it, trembling, and slowly ate a small bite. Her expression shifted slightly, softer, calmer. Then Mason continued, "Deathworld drills feel normal to me because Earth is a death world. It pushes us from the moment we're born. But that doesn't mean we're better. It just means we're used to pressure. You can get used to it too." Sarah looked thoughtful. "I want to learn, but I do not know where to start." Before Mason could answer, the ground trembled. All eyes turned toward the command tower. The sound was deep, mechanical, and heavy. Something large had just woken up. The recruits exchanged frightened looks. "That sound, that's the Omega unit," one of them whispered. "The final test." Nobody had expected this test to start today. Some species took years before facing the Omega unit. Even advanced soldiers sometimes failed. Today was supposed to be another normal training day. But the alarm blared and the metallic gates at the far end of the yard began to open. A cold wind blew in. Lights flickered. The entire yard fell silent. From the darkness behind the gate, a massive training construct stepped forward. It wasn't a creature, and it wasn't a soldier. It was a giant artificial machine built only for one purpose: to test fear. The Omega unit glowed with bright training lights, not weapons. It didn't harm recruits, but it forced them to face overwhelming pressure. Its steps were slow and heavy, each one sending a vibration through the ground. Several recruits backed away instantly. Some hid. One dropped to the floor, shaking. Sarah felt her chest tighten with panic. "We are not ready," she whispered. "No one told us this would come today." Mason placed his lunchbox down and stood up. "Maybe it came because you are ready." She shook her head. "I am not." Mason smiled gently. "Then let's get you ready." He stepped in front of her, not as a shield, but as a guide. The Omega unit scanned the yard. Its glowing sensors turned toward Mason and Sarah. It began to move closer. Sarah's legs froze. Her hands shook harder. Her breathing turned hurried and shallow. "Look at me," Mason said quietly. "Just me. Ignore everything else." She forced her eyes to meet his. "You can breathe slowly," Mason continued. "You can stand tall. Fear is loud, but you can talk louder." She nodded shakily. The Omega unit stopped just 10 meters away. Its lights shifted to a brighter color, signaling that the real test was starting. Sarah felt like running, but Mason lifted a hand. "You don't have to run. You don't have to beat it. Just don't break. That's enough for today." For a moment, the yard held its breath. Sarah took a slow breath. Then another. Then another. Her eyes stayed on Mason. Her shoulders relaxed just a little. Her heartbeat slowed. For the first time since joining the training program, she didn't collapse. She didn't cry. She didn't panic. She simply stood there. The Omega unit scanned her expression, measured her breathing, and after a long moment, its lights shifted back to a calm blue. It turned and walked away. Test completed. The recruits gasped. Nobody expected that a gentle, frightened trainee like Sarah could pass any stage of the Omega unit test. Sarah exhaled a shaky breath of relief. I did it." Mason smiled. "Yeah, you did. But how?" she whispered. "Because you faced it," Mason said softly. "And that's all fear ever needed from you." Around them, the other recruits watched Mason differently this time. Not as a mystery. Not as a strange human who ate lunch during chaos. They watched him as someone who could help them, someone who could guide them, someone they needed. And slowly, something powerful began to form in the training yard. Respect. The training yard felt different the next morning. The usual fear was still there, but something new had appeared too. Hope. Word about Sarah's small victory had spread across the camp. Recruits from different species whispered about it, exchanged surprised looks, and even stood a little straighter than usual. All because one human showed them that fear didn't have to control them. Mason Hale walked into the yard with his lunchbox as usual, but This time, eyes didn't avoid him. Eyes followed him. Some nodded respectfully. Some looked at him with curiosity instead of confusion. Some simply wanted to understand how he could stay so calm even when the galaxy's toughest drills tried to break them. But Mason didn't act any differently. He set down his lunchbox on the same crate, stretched his shoulders, and prepared for another day of training. Sarah approached him with a quiet but determined expression. "Good morning," she said, sounding a little stronger than yesterday. Mason smiled. "Morning. Sleep well?" "I tried," she admitted, "but I kept thinking about the test and how I did not fall. Because you stayed with the moment," Mason said simply, "not against it." Sarah nodded. She seemed proud but also nervous. "Do you think today will be harder?" Before Mason could answer, a loud horn echoed across the field. A group of high-ranking trainers stepped out of the command tower, elders, tacticians, and officers from several species. Their robes and uniforms blew in the wind as they walked to the center. The yard fell silent. This was unusual. The elders rarely appeared unless something important was happening. A tall officer with dark green scales raised the communication staff and spoke in a deep voice. "Recruits," he announced. "The Command Council has reviewed the recent training results. Yesterday, something unexpected happened. A recruit from a soft world species faced the Omega unit and remained standing." Soft gasps spread through the yard. Sarah lowered her eyes shyly. The officer continued. "We have concluded that a sudden rise in resilience and confidence has spread among the camp. And this change began after observing the human trainee." Every head turned toward Mason. Mason simply blinked. "Wow, that's new." The officer gestured toward him. "Human Mason Hale. Step forward." Mason walked calmly to the center, lunchbox still in hand. He didn't feel nervous. He didn't feel proud either. Mostly, he felt curious. The officer looked at him closely. "You do not appear stronger than the others. You do not run the fastest. You do not lift the most weight. And yet, the drills do not break you." Mason shrugged lightly. "They're tough, sure, but not impossible." The officer leaned closer. "Explain." Mason took a slow breath. He knew every recruit was listening. "It's simple," he said. "Humans come from a world that doesn't wait for us to be ready. Earth teaches us early that stress is normal. Challenges are normal. Danger is normal. We don't succeed because we're fearless. We succeed because we learn to keep moving with fear." The recruits listened carefully. Mason continued. "You think I'm calm because I'm not scared. But the truth? I get scared too. I just don't let fear decide what I do next." The yard stayed silent for several long seconds. Finally, the officer nodded slowly. "Then you will lead today's resilience drill." Mason blinked again. "Me? Lead the drill? I thought I was still the student." "Today," the officer replied, "you are both." The council members stepped back. The recruits waited, wide-eyed. Sarah watched Mason with mixed fear and excitement. Mason rubbed the back of his neck. "All right then, let's make it simple." He walked to an open area, planted his lunchbox on the ground, and turned around. "First rule," he said loudly, "nobody runs today, no matter what happens. You don't have to fight anything. You don't have to beat anything. You don't have to impress anyone. You just stay present. You breathe. You stay standing. That's it." The recruits exchanged nervous glances. Mason continued, "Second rule. You stay close to each other. Nobody stands alone. Fear grows when you think you're isolated, but it shrinks when you know someone is beside you." Sarah stepped forward. "And the third rule?" Mason smiled. "The third rule, we trust ourselves more than the drills." The council nodded approvingly. They activated the training sequence. A soft hum filled the air as holographic illusions formed across the yard. Shadows shifted. Pressure waves moved across the field. Simulations rose from the ground, harmless, but intimidating. For many trainees, these illusions usually cause panic. But today, something different happened. Mason stepped calmly into the field. Sarah followed, then a tall red recruit, then a small glowing creature with 3 eyes, then another, and another. Soon, The entire group walked together, facing illusions not as panicked individuals, but as a unit. The simulations tried to overwhelm them with sudden noise, shifting light, and heavy atmosphere. Some recruits shivered, some wobbled on their legs. But Mason kept speaking softly as he walked. Breathe in. Look forward. Yes, that's it. Don't rush. One step at a time. Mason kept the pace slow, steady, peaceful. At one point, a large projection appeared, a tall, intimidating figure meant to scare any trainee. Many flinched, but Mason lifted a hand. "It's only a picture," he said. "It can't hurt you." The recruits breathed together, and the illusion passed. Step by step, the toughest drill in the program became something completely different, not a test of fear, but a lesson in calm. By the time the simulation ended, every recruit was still standing. For the first time in years, nobody broke. The council looked stunned. Sarah looked proud. Mason returned to his lunchbox, sat down on a familiar crate, and opened it casually. Someone whispered, "He's really eating again." Another whispered, "He deserves it." For the first time, the yard wasn't filled with fear. It was filled with respect, relief, and something new, unity. Mason took a small bite of his meal and looked around the yard. He didn't smile because he wanted to look heroic. He smiled because he genuinely felt proud of them all. For the first time, the recruits weren't afraid of Deathworld drills. They were ready for them. And Mason Hale, the human who ate lunch during chaos, had taught them that strength didn't always come from toughness. Sometimes it came from calm, sometimes from breath, sometimes from someone who simply refused a break.